Hello and welcome to this RetailX e-commerce world review webinar in which we'll be discussing the RetailX 2021 sustainability report. I'm Emma Herrod. I'm one of the editors at InternetRetailing and RetailX, and I'm also author of this sustainability report. I'm joined today by two wonderful guests who have agreed to share their views on the area and some of the topics that have been raised in the report. Can I just briefly ask you both to introduce yourselves and the companies you work for some of the audience who may not yet have met you?
Thank you. Yes. First of all, good afternoon, Emma. Good afternoon, Anders. So I'm Renaud. I'm in charge of business development in Asendia. So we are a specialist of cross-border delivery for e-commerce, and for sure, sustainability, green distribution is one of our key topics, I would say, since years and probably for the next few years again.
Thanks, Renaud. Nice to meet you, and thanks, Emma. My name is Anders, and I've worked in the last 6 years within fast fashion e-commerce at Bestseller, all the time within logistics, where I'm currently positioned at the carrier manager. We ship around 16 million parcels a year to 15 different countries, and I'm managing the operations as well as commercial relationship with our carriers and line haulers. About Bestseller, our clothes are sold and marketed on around 20 different brands, amongst others, Jack & Jones, Only, and Vero Moda. Regarding sustainability, at Bestseller, we have set ourselves a very ambitious fashion-forward strategy where we want to accelerate fashion's journey towards the sustainable reality, because we know our industry is having a quite significant impact when we're talking carbon footprint. And therefore, we've also signed up for the science-based targets.
Excellent. Look forward to hearing more about that as we continue the chat. Well, as I said, we're going to be talking about the RetailX 2021 sustainability report. And when Internet Retailing decided to launch this first sustainability report in 2020, we set out to discover the extent of sustainability strategies across Europe. We wanted to find out what the European leading retailers and brands were doing, what this meant in terms of action, implementation, and the strategies being put in place. So with the 2021 report, we took things further, investigating what's important to eco-conscious consumers, whether their attitudes are actually matching behaviour, are they spending in a way that their ethics say that they could be, and how are retailers sharing their sustainability journey with the shoppers themselves? What's the extent of greenwashing, something that retailers have been accused of, or should I say some retailers have been accused of? How can it be avoided? How are retailers using their supply chain to deliver sustainable change? And as part of that, how retail is developing in terms of the circular economy, an exciting change happening across the industry. And as part of the report, we looked at the fashion sector and jeans in particular. So it makes for interesting reading how this area of fashion that uses an awful lot of water and other unsustainable manufacturing methods can be turned into something a lot more environmentally friendly. And as we all know, the stakes for the planet have never been higher. When the report came out, it was on the cusp of COP26, the 12-day summit in Glasgow, which brought together almost 200 world leaders, thousands of negotiators, government representatives, NGOs, businesses, and interested citizens. Countries published and updated their climate targets, and decisions were made around mobilising finance to phase down the use of coal, help poor countries to cope with the effects of climate change, making the switch to cleaner energy easier. And they were just some of the decisions that were made at the time. But a recent IPCC report has said that a lot of the targets aren't actually going to be enough, even though the United Nations Environmental Programme has been working on trying to bring about change since 1972. So we looked at the legislation that's in place as well as what consumers are wanting, because consumers say they want retailers to be sustainable, whether that's organic farming, looking at the ingredients on packaging to see where the ingredients are sourced. Does it have any harm to animals in the environment? Are the workers having sustainable wages? How are the factories working? What's the working life for those people that are manufacturing the goods that we're all buying? So every consumer has different thoughts, different reasons for being sustainable. And of course, sometimes they can't necessarily want to pay the premium price that retailers are putting in place for some of the products. So it might be that they have the best intentions, but those intentions aren't always carried out. And we look at it, and so some of the stats from the report, 48% of consumers in the UK and the US are now more conscious of how their online shopping affects the environment. And that's higher than it was before the pandemic. And around the world, consumers rank environmentally friendly packaging higher than other issues. And this is the same in lots of the different countries where we were researching. And it varies. It's between 40 and 60% depending on the country. But it does show how the packaging can actually influence what consumers are doing and what they're buying. Luckily, many people do feel that they can make a difference. Conscious consumers, expecting retailers to take action and change their own behaviour as well.
Emma, just one remark. First of all, thank you for this slide. I found it extremely interesting. And first of all, to be fair, I was a bit surprised because I was expecting to have the highest score in Northern Europe, because this is what I had in mind. But in fact, this is not exactly the case. And I think this is a perfect illustration of the topic. And the topic, in Asendia, Asendia is a young company. We created Asendia 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, we wanted already to have some initiative towards sustainability, reducing carbon footprint. But it was really only a European topic. 10 years ago, it was really a topic for Europe, not for the US, and not at all in Asia. And even in Europe, it was really a topic for Northern Europe. Your slide shows really clearly that it's no longer a topic only for Northern Europe. And to be fair, this is not only a topic for Europe. You mentioned the US. More and more in the US, this is important. More and more the US consumer are extremely careful. And even in Asia, for me, this is really a new trend from the last 2 or 3 years. Even in Asia, the retailers are more and more conscious and they take more and more initiatives. This is probably less advanced than in Europe, but it really becomes a worldwide trend.
Amongst the Chinese consumers that were interviewed as well, they were all saying that plastic packaging rates very highly on their environmental issues.
And for me to add here, I think you're absolutely right, Renaud, that there is an increasing awareness of sustainability. But you also mentioned the third point, Emma, about not all consumers being ready to pay for the sustainability. But what we see is not only an increasing awareness, but also an increasing willingness to actually pay for the more sustainable solutions.
Yeah, and that's interesting, sort of from the delivery point of view as well, whether people are willing to pay for greener delivery methods or offset the carbon from that. So I think that's something that Zalando is doing in Germany.
And it's actually also something we're doing at Bestseller for not only Germany, but also Denmark, the Netherlands, Switzerland as well. But for me, it's important to make a clear distinction between what you call green deliveries and climate compensation, because that's two different things in our world, and compensation can never be a trade-off for actually reducing emissions and therefore make a greener delivery. On the name itself, green delivery, we don't refer to our more sustainable deliveries as green deliveries because we believe there's always a green alternative. So yeah.
Okay. So what are you actually doing in terms of your not called green deliveries? Is this sort of bicycle carriers or electric vehicles?
So namely because there's already always a green alternative, the sustainable initiatives that we've implemented to actually reduce our carbon footprint, we're not promoting as such, not in the checkout or at the storefront for our customers. We, of course, highlight this in our CSR reports and so forth, but we will not promote as such a green delivery before we will get to the stage where we can call ourselves 100% carbon neutral. What we can do in the meantime is, of course, promote things like offsetting, because as long as the industry infrastructure and the technology is not there to be 100% carbon neutral, offsetting is, of course, better than doing nothing. But it's very important for us that we call it offsetting, because that's what it is. It is offsetting and has nothing to do with reducing emissions as such. Speaking of greenwashing that you also highlighted, Emma, this is namely why we are calling it climate offsetting, because we don't want to risk being accused for greenwashing.
Oh, that's interesting, because sort of one of the other things we did in the report, we were also assessed what we call the RetailX EU Top 1000. So this is sort of the leading retailers across Europe, and we looked at their consumer-facing e-commerce sites rather than their corporate sites where a lot of the sustainability reports are held. So they're sort of more facing towards the investment community rather than their consumers. And we wanted to find out how they're actually reporting their journey to their own customers, what they're saying about transparency. Are they showing listing the factories, for example, where the products are manufactured? We found out that actually quite good. A lot of them, like over 56% of them, have sustainability goals and commitments on their e-commerce site, which is great. But sort of going beyond that, there's a lot of things that aren't included. 11% have a publicly accessible sustainability report from the last year on their report. Most of them are mentioned, as I said, mention sustainability, but not many of them say how they're going to reach those goals. 20% report on the progress of their sustainability. And I mentioned there about the factories where the products are manufactured. That's only 6% of these 1,000 retailers that actually include these lists. So at a time when consumers are wanting more transparency, and Anders, as you mentioned, trying not to be accused of greenwashing, I think this is something that we're probably going to start seeing more of. So, Anders, how much do you show on your website? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, so of course, if you go to our help desk and about bestseller pages, you can of course read more about our sustainability and fashion forward strategy, as we call it. And also some of the initiatives that we're doing within different areas, but also across different countries. But it's a long journey, of course, and it's not something you just you don't just become sustainable from one day to another. And therefore, we're very curious about not promoting too much, I would say, in the checkout and at the storefront where our customers is actually making their buying decision and buying our products. We have also committed, as I mentioned in the introduction, we've committed ourselves to the science-based targets, where we have committed ourselves to some science-based goals on how we are reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, you can also read more about this on our websites, but you need to look for this. You need to actually make an active search for this. It's not, a big banner on the storefront landing page, which is leading you to this kind of information.
Because we are finding that more consumers are looking for that information, and they're going out and actively researching retailers' sustainability goals.
I fully share this point, and thank you, Anders, because as a consumer, I really always look for comments, information about the program of the retailers. You say something that is extremely true. You say you don't become sustainable or green or whatever immediately. It's a process. It's a long process. This is an investment. And you mentioned the science-based targets initiative. This is a very serious and universal model. You need to invest time. You need to analyze your situation. You need to propose targets. You need to validate your targets, and you have to report. So there is no magic behind. This is a long process, whatever is your activity, by the way. And the company that says that suddenly become green overnight, we can have some doubts.
It is a balance, right? Because it's a balance between promoting the good initiatives that you're doing, but also doing it in the right way so that you're not getting accused for greenwashing or by mistake, whether it's by purpose or not, leads the customer to think something which is not true. Let me pick up what I said before about using the word green and the green solution. We need to question ourselves, what is a green solution? There is always a green alternative, I would say. And with the development we see within infrastructure and technology and the long-term investments you're also highlighting, Renaud, there will always be a green alternative. And therefore, we need to be careful about how we promote that to our customers.
Yeah, correct. And you use the right words. This is an investment because people have to keep in mind that it costs money. So it costs money short term, and for sure, if you don't invest now, if a company does not invest now, it's going to die. I'm sure of that. But it takes time, and you need to invest money, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, some of the figures that have come out from the European Commission that have looked at the circular economy, saying that over time, the circular economy will actually save retailers money. But obviously, as you said, Renaud, there's that process of actually getting there.
Yeah,
it's a complete turnaround of business processes.
But for me, it's even clearer than that. So if the companies, retailers or suppliers or transport company don't invest now, they will just disappear. So for me, it's not a choice, it's an obligation, If you want to still exist in 5 years or 10 years, you have to invest to become, okay, no debate, greener or more sustainable or whatever, but you have to make efforts and be ready, because in 5 or 10 years, it will be the rule. And when I say the rule, I see it even by law.
I'm not an expert in macroeconomics, but I do know that for sure when we will get there and we will have a high extent of circular economy, the OPEX cost, the operating cost will for sure be lower. But speaking of investments, the capex, the investments right now will be high for sure.
Yeah. I was interested there when you were saying about obligations, because sort of one of the other things we were looking at in the report are about taxes and what governments are doing to bring about the change. Because we said there earlier on about the pressure from consumers, and retailers themselves want to change as well. UN has set goals, and the EU has set goals that all countries must be hitting these sustainability targets. In the UK, we've got a new tax coming into force on the 1st of April around plastic packaging. So this is reducing the amount of virgin plastic that's used across the supply chain. So not just the packaging that consumers see in the shops. This is something that's coming in across different countries in Europe. Just happens that the UK is around the time of our webinar, so I've brought that one up. I know, Renaud, you is it Asendia or is it La Poste that's brought in recyclable is it recyclable reusable packaging?
Yeah, in fact, this is an interesting initiative of La Poste in France, La Poste being our mother company, together with a French startup called Ipli. They developed a concept, a very interesting one, to reduce the impact of the packaging. And it's not about recycled packaging, this is about reusable packaging. And this is why I find it extremely interesting. For me, this is relatively new. The concept is that at checkout, the retailer proposed to the consumer to use a reusable bag. So it's probably not adapted for all types of goods, but for fashion, this is extremely well adapted. And the principle is that the retailer send a reusable packet to the shopper. The shopper then resend it to the supplier, and it is washed and resent to the retailer. So there is a life cycle, and these bags, they can be reused 100 times. And if a bag is reused 100 times, it helps to decrease or to decrease 25 kilos of waste. So for sure, this is a concept not really developed, but I think that more and more, I hope that even more and more we'll have this type of initiatives, extremely visible for the consumer. In the end, this is quite simple. And we come back to a short exchange we had earlier. This is still a choice by the consumer, and it is an effort for the consumer. For me, my question is, when will this type of initiative will become normal and will become the standard? This one I don't know, but again, I'm very interested in that concept. In Asendia, we think about testing this concept for cross-border orders, and maybe in a couple of months or years, I will be able to share with you the result of the test.
Yeah, that would be interesting to hear more. I know when we were chatting earlier, and as you were mentioning, you commented on the use of plastic packaging versus paper.
Yeah, that's true. So at Bestseller, we use plastic bags still, 100% recycled plastic bags though, of course certified. The reason for that is that we've actually found it hard to prove that paper bags, for example, is more sustainable than 100% recycled plastic bags when you consider not only the downstream but also the upstream activities of producing those bags. Yeah, so for that reason, we're still using plastic bags, 100% recycled plastic bags.
And do you explain that to consumers actually on the bags, or tell them that what the bags are made from?
Yeah. We have a logo on the
Right.
bags, including the certification and standards. Yeah, as an authorization of the fact that they are recycled.
It's interesting with a lot of people I've talked to saying that sustainability is a journey, and you've got to take your customers on that journey with you. So so at least by having it on the packaging, they can see that you're at least that you are thinking about things.
Yeah, and we do the same for the parcel emissions that we are offsetting together with, for example, La Poste, as well as other carriers in Europe. We try to the extent possible to add these typically carrier provided logos of the offsetting product that they are offering, so that the customers can also see not only pre-buy in the checkout but also post-buy on the labels that the emissions from this parcel has been offset. This is, let's say, easier for us to communicate, because in this way you can quite easily with a logo conclude and tell the customers that the emissions at 100% has been offset for this parcel. But for all the other initiatives that we're doing, like implementing HVO diesel on our truck fleet, which is only reducing parts of the total emission, it's harder for us to communicate. And for that reason, we are not as such communicating that actually actively in, for example, the checkout. We do that in, of course, our sustainability reports. Yeah.
Okay. And how does sort of changing the full supply and logistics fleet, what are the connotations of trying to do that? Because that's not something that can happen overnight. Is it just a small percentage that's been changed, and you have and I assume you have targets for it as well?
Yeah, we have targets given the fact that we signed up for the science-based targets. We have committed ourselves to reduce our scope 3 emissions, which include transportation by 30% in 2030. How are we doing this? We are challenged by the infrastructure and technology. When you're doing heavy load traffic from, let's say, Poland, where we have one of our warehouses, to Spain, you cannot do that with an electrified truck, at least not under the delivery promise that we promise our customers in checkout. But wherever we can and where it's possible, we of course try to implement greener alternatives or more sustainable alternatives like HVO diesel, which we've implemented to our truck fleet to the Nordics and Benelux. Where we have a, so to say, closed milk run with a truck going both outbound and return, and where we for sure can say this truck transporting only our parcels in this closed milk run, we can fuel with HVO, because we know that there are gas stations along the way where we can fuel with HVO. But yeah, we're still limited by infrastructure, for example. We cannot do this on all trucks, unfortunately.
And you say that, Emma, and I'm pretty sure Anders will agree. This is not something that you improvise, because you cannot replace your own fleet or change totally all your buildings in a week's time, or in a month's time, or in a year time. This is really a long process, and I would say a strategic decision for the companies that goes in that direction.
Of course, there is a strategic decision on not only the cost, but also the operations. Because when we go there, when we decide to implement HVO diesel on some of our trucks, we cannot go back, because that will just, increase the emissions even further. So when we do the reduction, we need to make sure that also medium and long term, we can keep that reduction within our emissions and carbon footprint.
And having said that, this strategic decision, what I've seen in the companies I work for, is really fully supported by all the employees. Usually, when you present a strategy, you could have a debate, discussion, but there are never debates about this topic. This is really a topic that today is fully supported by all the employees in all the companies I work for. And usually, when you discuss with CEOs and so on, all the employees are very fully committed and extremely proud.
True.
And which is important as well, to bring all your staff with you in this type of project, because again, this is a long-term project.
It is indeed.
Yeah, and is that something that Asendia is doing, or is part of La Poste, sort of taking all of the employees along on the journey? Because you've got science-based targets approved as well at Asendia, don't you, Renaud?
Yeah, correct. In La Poste, there are science-based targets approved. This is a full process, and this is a process that started more than 10 years ago. And when you are a postal operator, a large postal operator such as La Poste, but when you are a large company, you have to plan these projects, because it's about replacing the fleet, replacing the vehicles by electric vehicles. And again, this is not something that you can improvise and decide easily. We were in a previous webinar, and we had a discussion regarding Amazon, because Amazon communicates a lot on the electric fleet, but in fact they create their fleet sometimes, so it's easier. But for postal operators that are delivering since decades, even more. It's a question of sustainability as well, not only with the green aspect of sustainability, but with the social aspect of sustainability. So you need to have a sustainable plan, realistic plan to replace step by step your fleet and to become really, because this is the ambition, to become a zero emission company. So I fully agree with Anders, because this is what we see on the slide. Asendia, we offset. So we offset because in Asendia we don't have trucks, we don't have planes, we don't deliver. So we cannot really reduce. So the decision we made is to offset the compensation of our vendors. So we purchase services. We purchase services from a airline company. We purchase services from postal company, and we offset the emission of our supplier. But it's fair to say that the target is to reduce. So in Asendia, we cannot reduce because we do not really have direct emission. And this is what is done in La Poste. So La Poste is our mother company. This is the next slide. So we have two mother companies, La Poste and Swiss Post. And, they are very good examples. And to be fair, we could have taken the example of bpost, PostNL, because all the big postal operators, and I would say even all the large carriers all over Europe and now all over the world, they are engaged in that direction. The objective is really not to offset only. Offsetting is good, and La Poste and other companies will continue to offset, but the objective is to reduce. And to reduce, you need to invest. You need to invest a lot. You need to replace your old trucks by a new van, and this is really the commitment. Here, I will not go in the detail, but this is what was said by Anders. You need to have a plan, and you need to have your plan certified. The certification, this is not a gadget. This is just to make sure that this is not greenwashing, and to make sure that you have a control. This is the reason why you have all these logos, and I made the choice to mention Science-Based Target Initiative. It's well known, it's used as well by Anders, by Bestseller. WWF, which is part of SBT, by the way. So it has to be clear, it has to be planned, it has to be organized, it has to be certified, it has to be approved. And this is done by La Poste. So this is the concept, this is the process, and then you have the acts, and the next slide, this is the example of the DPD group. DPD group, this is part of La Poste. This is a European or the European leader for transportation. And this is a very good example. You have the strategic plan at the La Poste group level, and then you have the application in the different entities. DPD, they own their trucks, and they have made really an ambitious plan. And this one, this is a new plan, because the former level of ambition was not high enough. In fact, it was already very high, but it was a plan to 2025. DPD made the choice to increase the ambition by 50%. So there was a full commitment, and the original ambition was almost reached at the end of 2021. So the choice made of DPD was, okay, we increase the ambition. And here really there are clear targets, checked, control, and Anders mentioned the existence of alternative fleets, and this is really the objective of DPD in the large cities by 2025, which is in 3 years now, to deliver all the main European cities, 350 cities in Europe with, I would say, clean vehicle or alternative vehicles. You need to purchase a vehicle, you need to adapt your organization. For sure, we have the vehicle, we have the pollution, but more and more it will be difficult to access the city centers. So you have to organize your logistic up in a different way. And you have that. We don't think about that. As an individual, when you purchase an electric vehicle, you have to think about the charging points. This is the same for all the transport companies. So very ambitious plan in La Poste, our mother company. Decline in Asendia, we offset. and the companies that can reduce, for sure, the objective is to reduce, no debate behind that.
That's interesting, and sort of the impact that the ultra low emission zones and cities have had on the carrier community. And I'm not sure how much has changed because the emission zones have been implemented, or because carriers wanted to make those changes, or consumers were pushing them to. But altogether, it shows how everybody, the governments, consumers, retailers, businesses, and the rest of the industry can actually make those changes happen. The other interesting thing you said there, Renaud, was about ambition, because that's one of the things that has come across from the report, is that regardless of where any business is in its journey to becoming more sustainable, there is always more that can be done. It is a journey. It's like omni-channel. When people started becoming multi-channel and mobile was starting out, people say, oh, we're on an omni-channel journey. And I think the same is becoming true with sustainability. But people are having to be ambitious about what goals they implement, and also keep coming back and reevaluating those goals, whether that's quarterly meetings run by the board and sustainability stakeholders, and see what they can achieve, what can be achieved with suppliers as well. I think the rest of the report covers an awful lot more, not just delivery and logistics. We've looked at the how retailers are showing the impact on sustainability from IT, carbon labelling, re-commerce, sustainability reporting. If anybody would like to download the report, I think there's a link on the next slide. Anders, Renaud, thank you very much. Do you have any other points that you want to raise on the discussions that we've had, or anything to leave our audience with?
Very clear for me, Emma. We can already agree on the next webinar, maybe in a year's time, to review the result of our actions in Asendia in a bestseller.
Excellent.
That's a fair point. Let's do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for wonderful insight into your businesses and into the topic of sustainability. And I look forward to continuing our chat next year, if not before, for the 2022 report. And the same invite to any of the audience. If you want to input into the next report, then please do get in touch. Thank you. And here, as I said, is the link for downloading the report, and look forward to talking again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Anders. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.